So that's it then for the 2020 Indianapolis 500. It's hard to believe that the whole roller coaster to get this to this point, from the race being delayed to going through qualifying to everything that transpired in the build up to this race, it's finally over. And it's been a couple of days since the race, and it's given me time to sort of gather my thoughts and put it together in a video. So since this account is called Triple Crown Racing, it's only right that I give my thoughts on the race this year. Now, this might not actually be the most refined of videos because I started writing it yesterday, so a lot of these, right after I watched the race, so a lot of these were just the raw thoughts that I happened to think just after I watched it. Perhaps that makes it more authentic. First of all, this was my 4th Indy 500, and well, out of the ones that I've seen, it wasn't exactly my favorite. It was probably the one that I enjoyed the least. I just found this year's running of the race, well, not boring as such, but less exciting overall than the runnings of the race that I've seen thus far, and the ones that have happened over the past few years. Dixon drove brilliantly, as he has done for most of the IndyCar season this year, but perhaps a little too brilliantly. I like the Indy 500 for the amount of lead changes that usually happen, but this absolute driving god somehow managed to lead more than half the race. Bear in mind, I am actually a Dixon fan, but even still, it was a little frustrating just to see one guy just dominating most of the race, but we'll get back to Dixon later. I guess the lack of competition may have been somewhat influenced by the lack of competitiveness from the Chevys in qualifying to a certain extent in the race as well, but that's not exactly something we can do anything about. I'm just hoping Chevy finds whatever's been plaguing them this year, and I hope they fix it for next year's race. Don't get me wrong, this race had its exciting moments. For instance, when Alexander Rossi picked up that penalty and was forced to start driving through the field from the back and past like 5 cars in the space of one straight in a part of a corner. Which, by the way, let's talk about that penalty. I'm a little bit undecided on the penalty because on the one hand, there was no way that the Andretti crew could possibly have known that Sato was going to leave his pit box at the same time. But at the same time, Rossi drove out into the side of Sato, and you know that's dangerous and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about that penalty. I'll leave it to you guys. So just tell me what you think in the comments below. Then of course Rossi pushed a bit too hard and ended up in the wall, which is a shame because I think he genuinely had a chance of winning that race. And as Rossi usually does have a chance of winning this race. He had a chance last year, but strangely enough, it was another pit stop bungle that screwed him up last year as well. So I'm seeing a bit of a theme here. Anyway, there was, of course, also the final few laps of the race when Dixon, Rahal, Ferrucci, and Newgarden were all catching the back of Sato. However, this would ultimately turn out to be a bit of a fizzer because of Pigot's crash, which, by the way, I'm so glad he's okay, because that was a nasty impact. It was right into the side of the pit wall, and I think 30 years ago, Pigot would be in a lot more trouble than he is now. Obviously, the safety cell protected him well, and the tire wall protected him well as well. So that's good to see that you walked away from it. I think it would have been awesome if they'd red flagged the race and did a short sprint to the finish once the tire wall was fixed, which I think everybody probably would have wanted as well, but there was too much damage to it, so we were robbed of a battle. But what can you do, really? I think it would have taken far too long to actually fix, and they didn't really have a choice other than to call the race. And obviously IndyCar then clarified afterwards that there were also too few laps to, you know, gather everybody up under the safety car and then red flag the race and get it going again. The thing is, it's a shame, because if the race had gone on a bit longer, I'm quite confident that Scott Dixon probably would have won that race. Everything up to the yellow had pretty much gone exactly to plan, and he certainly deserved to win, but Sato drove really well. He capitalized off Dixon's need to fuel save and took advantage of the yellow, so fair play to him as well, and well done. It was a good drive, and I guess I'm just frustrated that we didn't get to see the awesome battle that was formulating at the front towards the end. But overall, congrats to Takuma Sato. Great job by the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team, and tough luck to Dixon. But let's be real, he'll probably win the championship anyway, so it's not too big of a loss in the grand scheme of things. Can I talk about Patricio O'Ward and Rinus VeeKay? These two impressed me immensely this race. VK was looking good for a strong result and was actually carving his way through the field early on in the race. I can only imagine the sponsors were loving that because he actually got quite a bit of time on camera. He was making some really professional passes, and they mentioned him a few times in the broadcast. But he then had a bit of an incident on pit road, actually hitting one of his pit crew members by accident and picked up a penalty as a result, which is never a good idea. He would finish 20th as the second best rookie. Now, Patricio O'Ward was the best placed rookie, so obviously he gets the Rookie of the Year award, and he finished 6th. He ran a properly good race with Aaron McLaren Schmidt-Peterson and was actually challenging a lot of the guys at the front for a while. Really impressive stuff, and I reckon that once he and that team find their feet, they will be a force to be reckoned with. I'll tell you what, they'll be winning races for sure. And let's not forget, Patricio O'Ward started 15th, so that to finish 6th, that's a good effort actually, well done. But if you want to talk about big movers, JR Hildebrand and Helio Castroneves. Hildebrand started 32nd and finished 16th. Castroneves started 28th and finished 11th. Both of those guys were Chevy guys too, so imagine if they'd actually done well in qualifying. They could have won the race. I mean, who knows what would have happened if things had just turned out differently in qualifying. This is why I hope Chevy sort their issues out for next year and for next qualifying, because if they do, we're in for a cracker of a race next year. Now, one of the main talking points is, of course, Fernando Alonso. Now, going into the Indy 500, I really didn't expect Alonso to win. I did, however, expect to see him fight for it. Alonso was another one of those guys who drove a Chevy and qualified poorly, and for the first half of the race, we didn't see him at all. We eventually did see him start to fight his way through the field a bit, running around 15th to 17th after making his way up about 10 positions. But this man can't seem to get a break because, at the Indy 500 in particular, because a clutch problem meant that Alonso's car had to be pushed out of the pit bay by the pit crew, which meant that the pit stops were way longer than they should have been. It didn't help that he made 2 more stops than the winning strategy, which was used by the top 10, which was of course a 5-stopper. I must say, while there wasn't really much that could have been done to do anything about this, I think it's a crying shame that the man going for the Triple Crown spent most of the day at the back. But still, at least he finished this time. And while he did have a few issues and got nowhere near winning, Alonso was actually happy that he finished this time. He said in his Instagram post, and he said that the McLaren Schmidt-Peterson team did really well. Interestingly, he wasn't actually the best placed McLaren. Those honours go to Patricio O'Ward, while Askew got spooked by a spinner and crashed out of the race. This got me thinking, and I know a few people agree with me on this because I've seen it on social media. Yes, Alonso had clutch issues, but he was out-qualified by both of his teammates, and I think if he wants to be competitive at the 500, when he's not necessarily in the best equipment, I mean, McLaren and Schmidt-Peterson are pretty good, but let's be honest, they're no Andretti. I think he really needs a full-time drive, and I think he should have taken one in 2019 or even 2020, and I'm confident that if he'd really tried, he definitely could have made that happen. Instead, he didn't race full-time in anything, and I think that's really costing him. Bear in mind, when he went to Indy in 2017, he was racing in F1 at the time, which meant that his skills were still pretty sharp. But he hasn't been racing a lot as of late, and coupled with his lack of experience in IndyCar, and I know that seems weird to call Fernando Alonso, well, saying that Alonso was lacking in experience, but I think it's genuinely hurting him. Anyway, whatever the case, Alonso didn't win, which means that he has to wait another 2 years to go for the Triple Crown again due to the nature of his contract with Renault. This means that the door is now wide open for Juan Pablo Montoya to beat him to the Triple Crown. But that's another video in itself, and if you want me to make a video about that, please leave it in the comments below. By the way, shout out to Alex Palou, who would probably have been the highest placed Spaniard had he not crashed. The commentators mentioned in the broadcast that Palou was sort of complaining, so, oh, the headlines are about Fernando Alonso and I'm doing so much better than him. So there's the shout out that you were so very much robbed off by the Spanish press. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the social media reaction to the race and the dredging up of the IndyCar versus Formula 1 debate. I hate this debate. I really do. Why can't we just accept at this point that yes, to a certain extent, the skills of the series cross over to a certain point, but each requires their own unique skill set, and are ultimately completely different ballparks, and the drivers are not necessarily inferior to those in the other series. I saw a few people bring up the arguments that Formula One rejects, were beating and out-qualifying Alonso. Then I saw people arguing about, which is better, IndyCar's just turning left or whatever. Just the same standard arguments as usual, which get very boring after a while. I think that a few people are beginning to realize that this whole argument is stupid, but it will still take a while for this to eventually go away. Let's just stop having dummy spits on social media about which is better and just enjoy our own little sect of motorsports and our own little sect of open wheel racing, or even enjoy both if you feel so inclined. Anyway, those are my thoughts from the 2020 Indianapolis 500. What did I think? Well, it wasn't my favorite running of the race that I've seen, because it was a bit of a fizzer in my opinion. But then again, it was a fizzer by Indianapolis 500 standards, which means it was a pretty good race by another metric. What do you think? Put all your thoughts in the comments below. I do actually read them all, so you may as well say something. And I will most likely respond to you, because I do actually read all the comments. All the socials are in the description below, including the TCR Instagram, Twitter, and Discord server, as well as my own personal Twitter. Please go check those links out if you haven't already done so. Anyway, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.